It's definition.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting of the planning commission
And
to order at, I guess, 4:29, maybe a minute early. And I'm gonna do this new thing that we decided to do last time, which is to call roll. I'm gonna use people's name. If you answer, I think loud enough, maybe we'll get your picture on the video. So, because the complaint was they didn't know people who were on the planning commission. So, Aaron Lindberg,
Aaron Lindberg is here.
Steve Evers,
present.
Makeda Barkley is probably not present. She's not online either. Tony Mancuso
I'm here in the t-shirt.
and Jerry Clace, I'm here, and Bob O'Brien. Okay, we're gonna go to citizens to be heard. Are there any citizens who want to talk on something that's not on the agenda, just a general concern? And nobody online. Okay, we're gonna say that has passed as an opportunity. Any ex parte communications or disclosures? Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes. Do we have any questions, changes in the minutes? Any good motions about the minutes? I'll make a motion, we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I think we are to county updates.
Okay, and I'm gonna state that we all, anyways, I just feel like we're doing a bunch of overlap, because I'm just gonna, update you on issues that related to the planning commission from the last county commission meeting, which was on September 19th. So we had an ADO intent to apply workshop that we started, I think it was at 2:30-ish. And we went over 5 applications, kind of just a quick update. Before that, we were at 114 out of 150, right, already approved. And then Mary McGann was absent. Mike McCurdy was one of the applicants, so recused himself from voting. And didn't participate in any of the discussion either, and didn't vote on anything. So that was, I think that went well. And so in the end, we approved 4-1 to support the McCurdy and the O'Neill properties. And the McCurdy property is on Arnell Lane. The O'Neill property was on 1441 Spanish Valley. Okay. And then we postponed the Sorgan, am I saying that?
Sorg and for Trucet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like side by side on Spanish Valley Drive, right at the 4-way stop. And that, the reason that we postponed it, it was pretty split when we did a straw poll during the workshop. And so without Mary, the reality is, I think it would have been split. But no, we only had 5. So we just thought we'd wait for Mary, go put it, and wait for Mary and see where it went. And then we denied Venture Capital LLC, which is farther out on Spanish Valley. It's right there kind of at the corner of Beeman and Spanish Valley. That was denied altogether. And kind of the verbiage related to that was not in a preferred zone, getting quite a bit farther out in the valley, right? So the 2 others that were approved point blank, we felt like the McCurdy property backs up on highway commercial. And then the other one, I can't remember. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's really close to like Tom-Tom's, right? So it's kind of in that kind of high density, and I'll state, and I'll just be blunt, I didn't vote for any of them. I really am again kind of struggling with the McCurdy one. Arnell Lane is a very quiet little street. It's true his property does back up against highway commercial, but it is being accessed by a very quiet street. And then the other ones are all out in Spanish Valley. I'm just kind of like, sorry, but I of course I know we have to provide housing. I'm still I struggle with rural residential and so, but they passed, or some passed. And we're waiting on those other two,
October 3rd.
October 3rd, and we're down to. We
There
have
were
26,
26 available and it was approved 8 were approved.
right.
Yeah.
And the one question I asked, and maybe Steve, you know something about this, was the Hewitt, we basically kind of said, come back later-ish, right? And I asked, have we heard anything from that developer
Not
about,
from the developer, not beyond the conversation Steve and I had about, and you about the public
Right,
comments.
right.
Possibly being submitted.
which I'll speak to that. I did talk to Alicia about that. She talked to Matt Siniceros. I guess he's going to work on it, but he said there is a radio button that you can push that, says, send me a confirmation. So that's interesting. And again, she kind of went through all, she's like, I don't, Alicia's pretty on it. So I think if a comment comes in, she has it. But I do think if we can just make that a natural, obviously, you don't have to push the radio button, you just get the confirmation. I think that would be great. So I did talk to her about that. So yeah, so there we sit. We still have a few. Yeah, not many left. Comments, questions?
Anything from the review of those properties that we should take to heart here?
As far as,
Oh, wow, we're not really, I mean, the conversation of us in the planning department, working with the engineer and the road supervisor about possibly updating the construction standards. Such that if you're developing a project on a road and it comes to a particular number of average daily trips, that those developers could possibly be required to do road improvements, because as it sits, only subdividers do those road improvements. So that kind of conversation continues to come up, but it hasn't been solidified yet. Other than that, it really was mostly about location of this group of applicants.
yeah.
As opposed to other details.
Yeah. I had one more question, but it just escaped me, but I'll come back to it. Yeah, so there we sit. Getting closer, we'll see how effective it is, because it was a pilot, and that pilot's since, is that correct? Ends at the end of,
Well, this was the third round and it was the final round. I do know that there are going to be applicants requesting an extension for their
Okay.
infrastructure. More specifically, those on Highway 191 realistically, because they have to come up with traffic studies and drainage plans for UDOT approval, and you can't get site plan approval without UDOT approval first. So they'll be requesting extensions. Yeah.
that's it.
I do know that as we were getting to the end of the HDHO in terms of its limit, Kevin used to say, and it's an interesting thing, he used to say, well, we ought to be careful about who, we ought to be really convinced that a project is good,
Mhm.
because we can be quite selective, because we might bump a really good project for a moderately good project.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the ones that were approved, were they, and I should have made those notes, sorry about that. If they were flat out, the one, I think by Tom Tom's is RVs. If my memory serves me, and
Yes.
I think McCurdy's was
It
tiny.
was
home.
prefab tiny
Oh,
homes.
pre-
Yep.
So, we kind of had this going in two directions with the RVs and the tiny homes. Does there seem to be like a preference, like, oh, hey, these are more palatable and these
That's a
aren't?
good-
Like, I felt on the public comments, it was always, from what I've heard, it was always the tiny home was more, palatable.
That's the vibe I'm getting from the commissioners as well. And
Yeah.
to speak to that point, our applicants that are coming back, they're gonna be sure to be at the meeting because we want to speak to that as well, being open to the option of including those prefab tiny homes for visual aesthetic purposes. So I get the vibe too.
So I just wonder when we, a pilot program turns into like, is it like, oh, hey, it's done, should we now be
Right.
like, oh, yeah, let's do the tiny home thing, is that
Right.
like, do we want to continue with it, kind of thing?
Right.
I just kind of see that.
I wonder if it would exclude folks like Daniel Stott,
Yeah,
who those
Yeah.
are RVs, and that's a great project.
or
So
maybe it's two separate things, I don't know.
Yeah.
We have two different criteria for it, so.
Right, kind of looking at it. It'd be interesting too, if we were gonna extend it to start to talk to some of the developers and just like, They're there.
Years
They're
There's
let
thoughts,
them
there's
go.
thoughts, and I imagine we'll be putting together a discussion topic for
Okay.
commission. Just kind of on comments that we've received from
Yeah,
applicants,
that'd be
challenges
great.
they Seen development challenges.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Steve will know the answer to this. I think I probably do already. Probably the trailers are less expensive than the tiny homes or not.
Oh, I really have no idea what updated pricing would be.
Yeah,
I would think that's more just kind of the dwelling unit that a tenant will have. Either they're gonna have their own trailer or they're going to move in temporarily without their dwelling unit to an existing.
Yeah, it's 5 to 8,000 per se.
I bet,
So, and then-
yeah,
But
I bet.
building at $300 is 500 a square foot. like,
It's certainly the reason I asked the question
Yeah.
is, you know, if one was substantially less expensive than the other, would you want to break a new program into two parts? Because we've got people at all levels that need
Yeah.
housing.
Yeah, can I just add something? This is Elisa. Hi, I like this conversation. I just wanted to give my 2 cents because I think you're thinking about it correctly, OB, is that it almost feels like there's two different, really different development types that are coming out of the ADO. And one of those is tiny home communities, and the other one is more that traditional, like what we originally kind of were thinking with the ADO was it was going to be just campsites essentially for seasonal workers that lived out of their vehicles or whatever kind of situation they were living in, that were kind of squatting, so to speak, in the county and needed a place to stay that's sanitary with hookups and facilities. And I think it's kind of, yeah, it's been interesting to see kind of how this program has really kind of made made those two kind of types of living situations or that type of development kind of distinguish or different from each other. Because yeah, one is more expensive to develop than the other for sure. And they kind of serve a different population almost. So I think that's a good thing to be considering as we go forward.
We also have this whole thing where like commercial zones are adding this onto it, like with, that's almost like a third.
right, like Sherry Griffith, you mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
just
what I'm saying.
providing housing
Yeah,
for their
yeah.
employees, right?
So it's
Right.
almost like that's a separate. thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
Yeah.
Did you want to have anything else?
I suppose we can wait till we have the discussion about the expansion of the program. I'm sure
Okay.
we'll start here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all I have.
So we're on to general business, and I guess Elisa's going to talk about an update on our vacancy, EC vacancy. And I know we got 2 candidates at least now.
Yeah, we do. So far, we still just have the 2 applications that have been submitted. And I sent those along to you all. And we do still have ads in the papers for, I think, at least another week. So we were thinking that we could leave it open for that period of time. And most likely we'd want to have the interviews though on October 9th at our next meeting. But I wanted to ask you all what you think for the timing on that.
You'll never be there, but that shouldn't stop you.
Yeah, I think timing wise, Lisa, a week or so after, a week or 2 after the ads run, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can check in with you via email. If we don't end up getting any more applications by the time it's agenda time next week, then I will just see if we want to go ahead with the 2 that we have, or yeah, I'll just kind of check in. So, but that's exciting. We have 2 really good applicants so far. So looking forward to filling that seat. And then should I just go on with my other item in that section?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to briefly let you all know and fill you in on just the, the process that we're doing with our budget. So it is budget season. All department heads are creating and drafting their budgets. And so for planning and zoning, I thought it would be good this year to reach out to the Planning Commission and see if you have any ideas for projects or things that we need to be thinking about for planning projects in our budget for that. So just to give you a brief overview of like sort of the things that we do budget for that are not the larger planning projects, there is a lot that goes into it. So for instance, we have our basic operational expenses like just like equipment maintenance and office supplies, utilities, fuel, capital equipment, which includes the vehicle lease for our code enforcement and other site visits that we need to do. And then we have our administrative side of the budget, which is like things like public notices, professional and technical services. That includes software. That's actually quite a big expense. Software is very expensive these days. Subscriptions and memberships so that we can stay abreast of all the latest in planning practices. For example, we have memberships with the American Planning Association and Planetizen, which at least with Planetizen, I've been thinking that we should be able to let the Planning Commission have access to all that information. And there's a ton of like courses and things that they offer that I believe we pay for. That I think that could be great for the Planning Commission if they want it, if any of you guys wanted to get just more educated and information. And then we have expenses related to the actual, nuts and bolts of planning, which includes our special projects for things like conducting workshops and open houses. And these expenses include things like rental fees and for space and catering and workshop supplies. And then, of course, we have the big budget line item for planning projects, and that would include things like contracting, out for consultant services for long-range planning efforts or studies that need to get done to inform those efforts or land use code updates. And then we have a category for matching funds for grants. So like the boat renovation ramp. The boat ramp renovation project is a grant funded project that we do have a county match for. So yeah, that kind of summarizes all that goes into the budget. So I guess I'd like to hear if you have any thoughts immediately on ideas that we should be thinking about for future planning projects that would need to be funded. And if not right now, just maybe putting a bug in your ear for getting me some ideas as you wish.
I have one, and I would say for the projects where we want developer or contractor input, I think a $50 or $100 Amazon gift card, something like that, because I just don't think we're getting the feedback that we really need, and everybody's so pressed, and that might be a little additional carrot that might get some input.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. A little incentive to get some good quality feedback.
I mean, OB probably knows that, like in grad school, when I'm trying, that's often how they incentivize people to respond to surveys, or, they do give them little something.
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay.
Yeah, it is interesting.
This is an old tired idea that we've never gotten back to, which is 191 in the southern section, small area type study, which we talked about a lot of for a long time, and then it got delayed, and it's been delayed a couple of times, which then if we decided to do it, would probably cost some money, and maybe you'd need a consultant, I don't know. Do a survey probably, because now the old survey is probably a year and a half old.
And
What was that specifically? I think I missed what you were saying.
191, kind of going south of Moab.
And as far as transportation or land use or
Small area study.
a small area plan kind of thing?
Kind of mirrored the one that was done for the northern part.
right.
Right.
And there was concern, a fair amount of concern a couple of years ago that are we just gonna let it develop anyway it develops? It's a funny kind of stretch,
Mhm.
but it should not be that interest anymore.
What do you generally do in a small area study?
Well, what we did with 191 to kind of the north is talk about what are the visual impacts. Since people are coming in and out, these same things wouldn't necessarily work on the southern part, but there was a fair amount of kind of hiding development, so you'd still get a feel that you're coming in through the desert rather than coming in through businesses lined up along the street. So there's a fair amount of kind of setbacks, putting things, maybe, you know, I cannot remember fully, maybe having the hotel in front of the commercial area, but certainly setbacks and worrying about visual impact and worrying about what kind of density was going to go out there. Was it going to be dense housing, or was it going to be, I think we ended up with kind of a resort special designation for those areas.
Right.
So to your point, Obi, and Elisa, in the workshop last Wednesday, I was working on the Spanish Trail, Spanish Valley Road. And that's actually one of the topics that came up in that group too, was the visual impact in that area. So,
Yep. No, I think actually what you're talking about, OB, almost could be wrapped up into the future land use plan for Spanish Valley, because we do focus on specifically the highway 191 corridor and South 191. And I think there's definitely some special needs for that area in terms of visual impacts, and yeah, just the fact that it's kind of the entrance or the gateway, and you know, coming from the south into Moab. So yeah, I think you know, that is something we could maybe even find out as we go through this process with the future land use plan, that we might need to have more funding for additional work that needs to be done along just in that section. That's actually a great segue to the next topic, which is the future land use plan. If we don't have any other comments on the budget for now.
Good. Sorry, guys. One, it's gonna be short. I'm sure, and this is maybe more like Trish or incoming county administrator type thing. You're very right that software is wildly expensive, and buying software licenses and packages usually helps alleviate some of the cost. And I'm certain that you and Bill Holst and Bill Jackson all use CAD and Esri. And I'm wondering if the county has ever thought about contacting and purchasing, or maybe you already do that and it's just worked into the books in a way we don't see, but having those licenses procured by the county writ large and then divvied up among departments rather than having to everybody goes in, like you only buy like 3 or 4 Esri licenses, right? But
Yeah.
Grant probably has 30, you know?
Yeah, that's a good.
Hustle with the IT guys and figure out if the county can get better deals on that kind of thing.
Definitely. I do know we do have that plan with Esri. It is a countywide license, and then we divvy it up between whoever department needs it. So I think that our IT department is on that for the most part. I don't know if there's any like areas right now that we have software that's kind of been parsed out, and there could be. I definitely think that's a good point to start to really keep an eye on and make sure we're not buying too many separate little licenses here and there and not realizing that we could get a bulk deal. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Tony. That's a good point. Anybody else have anything on the budget or planning projects, ideas for 2024? Well, if you do, just send me an email. If you think of something that, you know, talked about in the past that never got done, or just a need that you think could happen in 2024 and we need funding for it, just let me know. I am going to be giving my presentation to the Budget Advisory Board in early, I think it's actually mid-October. I believe it's October 12th. But I'll let you guys know when that actually happens when we get closer. So on to the future land use plan. In the land use steering committee meeting that we had last Wednesday. So we did have a great turnout. Again, it was a lot of folks came. We had almost too many people for our new little space. So it's kind of a medium space in the planning and zoning new building. It's a great place to meet, but it's almost a little tight with, we had almost 20 people. So we'll probably do that next time at the Mark and make sure that it's not so cramped. So that, we covered a few big topics at that meeting, and I do want to have something more prepared for the next planning commission meeting so that we can have the whole planning commission provide be more engaged in all of these topics. So, but I'll just give you the debrief. Essentially, we went over the whole process that we're working with BAE Urban Economics to model out the higher density housing prototypes that we've come up with, and just kind of briefly discussed if we think we've got some of the good or the most appropriate higher density housing prototype developments, and we're getting that right. So there was a discussion on that, and then we reviewed the most recent workshop results from over the summer. And then we also presented the draft future land use map that's been revised based on all the feedback we've gotten. And that was presented in where I've divided it up now into 3 sections in the Valley. And so we're still just focusing on Spanish Valley and the Moab Valley for now, for the future land use plan. We're not reaching out into the far reaches of the county quite yet. We'll get to those areas next, but we really have to focus on this first. But I did divide the Valley up into 3 sections to show the 3 emerging planning areas that I feel like are becoming very distinct, which is, they're not totally distinct, but they kind of help us to understand or look closer at what's on the ground versus that whole picture of the Valley. So the first one is the City of Moab boundary area that also includes the Mill Creek node. And then the other one is going further south is the Spanish Trail node, which also includes the area around Arroyo Crossing. And then the last section, of course, is just everything south of Spanish Trail towards the county line, which we're just calling South Valley for now. So participants worked in groups and provided feedback on directly onto their maps as to where they thought certain types of commercial development would be appropriate in the future of that area through 10 to 20 years looking out, and whether or not they agreed with where we had designated higher density housing on the map. So we've got some very quality feedback from that group, and I really appreciated everybody showing up. And like I said, at the next planning commission meeting, I'll bring some more kind of focused agenda where we can kind of work through some of the sticking points that have come up since then. We did go through, I just want to briefly present what I've come up with for, if I can share my screen, Jenna, for some key principles that have kind of emerged over the process of our workshops and all the meetings that we've had with the Planning Commission. So these are, I think there's 8 of them so far, and I feel like we're just going to keep adding to this list, but these are the principles that have been kind of guiding all of the little decisions that you have to make when you're trying to designate future land uses on the map. So one of the biggest one, obviously, is diversifying the housing stock, and that means providing various levels of density, and then designating higher density residential and neighborhood mixed use within the vicinity of emerging neighborhood commercial nodes and also adjacent to the city of Moab, making sure that we're designating land uses along the shared border of the city of Moab that are compatible with their zoning and what their future vision is for development, providing opportunities for basic services and commercial needs also near the county line. That's been something that has been brought up multiple times at workshops and the Land Use Steering Committee, that people seem to feel strongly, and there hasn't been really any opposition to the idea that we could allow for some commercial development in the South Valley in order to provide, things like a basic, convenience store or something like that, where people wouldn't have to travel to Moab for every little thing. Directing increased density and commercial activity along major transportation corridors. That's an obvious one. Minimizing the need for additional access points that intersect with the Spanish Valley Drive shared use pathway. That's something that has come up kind of recently, as we've seen more development on Spanish Valley Drive, and we've gotten feedback from our road supervisor and the engineer on where they're really starting to get some progress going on the shared use pathway, and looking at those conflicts where driveways intersect the shared use pathway. And that really does cause a safety hazard. So as much as we can in the future land use map, I've already designated, pretty low densities along Spanish Valley Drive on that side where there's not another road where they could provide access off of Spanish Valley Drive. And there's just a few little handful areas that are like that, but it's important to think about. We're minimizing residential development in the highway commercial zone along Highway 191 and providing buffers between highway commercial and residential neighborhoods. And then in order to provide balance between increased residential density, we're designating some areas where lower density residential is most appropriate. So this is the idea of eventually adopting a policy where the county might implement downzoning in order to balance out higher density development in other areas. So those are good for now. I definitely will want to have some of your feedback and be thinking about those. Actually, I'm going to share my screen again. The next slide is just to summarize. We did go over some of these steps for just trying to work through the process here. The timeline has definitely gotten much longer. Am I sharing right now or not?
No.
Okay, here we go. So yeah, I think when we first started this, I was definitely thinking we were going to wrap it up by, sometime this summer. And so it's definitely gotten, we've learned that there's a lot more to do. And it's also tough when you're doing it in-house. This is a huge undertaking with a long-range comprehensive plan like this. Normally, a lot of times you would hire out consultants for this kind of work, which we are going to actually do as part of this process, but that'll really be the contract work that I have budgeted for this year's budget. I had planned this way back, which was to contract out like the final formatting of the document, bringing together all of the pieces, because we have a land use chapter, right, in our general plan. That whole thing is getting revised as part of this process. The Book Cliff small area plan that we worked on last year, that's a piece of this future land use plan. And now the future land use map focusing on Spanish Valley. So all of those pieces need to kind of be in a cohesive document that's presentable. And we also want to have some nice renderings, some illustrations to support the land use concepts that we're presenting as part of the land use designations, like the neighborhood mixed use. What does that actually look like on the ground, so that can inform later the land use code updates and how we're going to implement those development standards to make sure that development is being built and actually getting on the ground in the way that we had envisioned for this. So that's like number 3 on the list, and I'm going to work in October to put together that RFP and start getting that out there. In the meantime, we're going to be doing the revisions to continue drafting those revisions to the section 6 land use in the general plan. Continue to work with BAE on the density bonus incentive program. And then I hope to check back in with the steering committee in November, and then continue to have this as a recurring topic on the Planning Commission's agenda, so we can kind of chip away at some of the little sticking points as they come up. And then like February, March, maybe have some final versions that we could share with the County Commission, get some feedback and direction, and then going from there, I'm hoping that maybe by April, we could have a public open house to present this all back out to the community. So sorry, that was a lot. It was way more than I anticipated for this little agenda update. But anyway, that's where we're at. If anybody has any comments or questions.
Is it okay if I ask a question? Where are you at with code enforcement? With filling
Yeah,
out?
so we actually got the interviews done last week. We had 4 interviews. We think we've narrowed it down, so we should be putting out an offer letter. It should be like tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at. So yeah, human resources is ready to go. I think between our little selection committee that we had, which was Bill Holst, myself, and Chrissy Hoffine from the attorney's office, we were just kind of waiting to get ourselves consensus on who we were going to select. But yeah, I think it's basically there, Trish. So
Cool. Thank you.
yeah.
Great, I guess we're ready to move into a public hearing. The general rezone 2560 Spanish Valley Drive, parcel number 020021-001. And I guess Jen is going to lead us through this to start.
Thank you. I'll just give a brief staff report on that, and then our applicant is also here to speak on behalf of her application as well. So I just provided the vicinity map. I'll show the border survey in a moment as well as I'm reading through. This is the Mesa View Properties LLC application by Sarah Kimmerly, located at the northwest corner of Mesa Road and Spanish Valley Drive. The subject parcel is 2.88 acres, currently zoned large lot residential. The current use on the property is a single family dwelling and accessory structure. The applicant is requesting a general rezone to small lot residential for the purpose of future subdivision and creation of single family dwelling lots. The existing LLR zoning district allows for a maximum of 5 half-acre lots. The maximum lot size for parcels zoned small lot residential, the requested zoning district is 0.20 acres. At 2.88 acres, the maximum number of lots that could be created from the subject parcel, if approved for the zoning district, is 14. However, 14 is highly unlikely considering the need to meet minimum lot frontage requirements, setbacks for the existing home, and the likely inclusion of an interior roadway. The applicant has described in their narrative the goal of developing 9 lots if the small lot rezone were to be approved. Future availability for water connection has been confirmed by GWISA for up to 9 lots, and the applicant has been informed of right-of-way and road improvements that would be required during the subdivision stage if approved. At this time, no site improvements would be required as a result of the rezone. It is worth noting that the subject property is located close to the Spanish Trail and Spanish Valley Drive intersection, which exists in the 2012 general plan as a rural center. The rural center ranging in size from 5 to 30 acres and including increased residential density of up to 3.2 units per acre if the development includes 50% open space set aside, 25% affordable housing units, and multimodal transportation options, as well as no more than half acre of the total dwelling units being multifamily dwelling units. While this application does not include a proposal for open space, affordable house, nor fee in lieu, later subdivision of 9 lots is consistent with the prescribed density for that rural center node. The subject parcel would have access to the multimodal options as it's located along the Spanish Valley Drive and shared use path. As such, a subdivision in this location would require the construction of that shared use path fronting the development. Additionally, the areas surrounding the Spanish Valley Drive, Spanish Trail Road are anticipated to be identified in the 2030 future land use map as a possible area that could be identified for increased residential density and more mixed commercial uses as an emerging commercial and neighborhood node. The exact area where the increased residential might be supported on the future land use map has not yet been finalized as we're still in that planning process. As mentioned in the applicant statement, a request for rezone of the property immediately to the north of the subject parcel was approved by County Council in September of 2019, and that rezone from LLR to SLR allowed for 1 additional lot in that location. Additionally, the property to the southwest mentioned in the applicant statement is that of the Manderfield HDHO rezone application that allowed for the subsequent subdivision of 5 lots measuring 0.20 acres each. Additionally, nearby developments that have been approved for increased residential include the Desert Soul HDHO 42 lot subdivision to the south and a recent 7-unit ADO near the intersection of Spanish Valley Drive and Spanish Trail Road. So the completeness of the application and the requirements within were evaluated by Ladies Code Section 9.2 about text rezonings, text and rezonings. So that is a vicinity map, and additionally, we've been provided with a boundary survey as well.
Any questions about the general presentation?
Is it appropriate for me to ask questions?
Sure.
Did you say it was rural residential or large?
It's LLR.
Okay, LLR, okay, great. And then you mentioned the ADO that was around
Rico.
that.
Anthony Rico at the corner of that triangle property. with
Okay.
7 units.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. I didn't
You
know
see
that.
my
Thank you.
In the interest of this public hearing, right?
Public hearing.
In the interest of opening the topic for discussion. I will make a motion to,
Oh,
are we there yet?
yeah, I don't think we're there yet because we have a presentation here, and then, yes, I think a motion is
Then first,
appropriate.
you got it.
So I think Jenna's presentation was excellent, gave you plenty of information.
Put your name.
I'm Sarah Kimberly.
Okay.
Sarah, if you wouldn't mind, can you come up to our table so the owl can catch you and so next week is Sarah.
Sarah, I forgot my hearing aids, so.
Oh, I'll try. I don't have a super loud voice, but I'm closer now.
You're good.
So, it was a great presentation and I feel like she gave you lots of really good information about the area and the potential subdivision. One thing that was interesting to me as, Elisa was going through those, 8 points was they're looking, or you guys are looking to not have necessarily more driveways or accesses on Spanish Valley Drive right at the shared use pathway. And in the subdivision that we've kind of drawn out, it would actually be accessed off of Mesa Road. So people would have their backyards on Spanish Valley Drive. It's like 4 miles to town. So I think I think this is a reasonable place to have a little bit higher density. And like she said, just to the north is SLR and just to the south across Mesa Road on that future land use map was slated to be potentially SLR too. So I don't know if you guys have questions for me about it.
You know, what Sarah attached to the notes was, I'm pretty sure it was a letter by you that was a statement.
Yeah.
That included some other information. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read that but just for the benefit of those that might not have, could you summarize? I thought it was a good summary.
Okay, there's a lot of information on there. I tried to be dense in a page. I guess, my husband and I have a construction company and we put a subdivision out in San Juan County. And they're about like 0.23-ish acre lots. And every house that we've built and sold out there has been sold to people who live here, who work here, who take their kids to soccer practice here. That's just, we want to employ people in Grand County. We want to sell houses to people in Grand County. That's just kind of our MO. And so when we bought this property a couple of years ago, that is what we had in mind for it. And you probably read it. I mean, we can leave it, as 1/2 acre, 1 acre lots, but then those houses are going to get listed for $1.5 million. They're not going to be affordable to school teachers and people who work here. And I have kids in the schools right now. I know this is a tough town to recruit employees. So anyway, that's kind of our MO and that's what we have in mind for this particular property. So questions about something in the letter?
So you state that you're not receptive to deed restricting it at all for any kind of low income or workforce housing.
I'm not seeing it work. And like I said in there, we live right by Starbucks Lane. And there's a piece of property on there that has that density zoning. It's been for sale for 3 years. It's just sitting empty. No one is living in that.
The
There are two
Starbucks on
dwellings.
Plateau,
Hmm.
it's extremely expensive. I'll state that. That's my opinion.
It is.
That's why I
everything
think
in
that's
county
why
is
it's-
expensive.
I understand, but I think we keep using that. And it's hard for me to, anyways, that's all I'm gonna say.
So, but I just, as somebody who buys properties and develops them and builds houses, it's really hard to develop a piece of property and build a house and make it inexpensive.
I understand. I built a lot of houses. I understand.
And you
Okay.
threw, I think you threw out the number, someone threw out the number, $300 to $500 a square foot. It's so tough. So, I don't want to build $1.5 million house. I want to build something that a nurse can buy or a school teacher can buy. So that's my idea. And this feels like a really feasible location in the county. It's right there on Mesa Road. It's just 2 blocks off of that Sage Creek development.
Have you followed any of our teacher land use map workshops for that area?
No, but as she was describing the one that you had just last week, I thought, "Oh, I wish I
So,
had been there."
One of the things, are we allowed discussion now? Or-
I think we can talk to the, yeah, you can talk to her and ask her questions.
So. That's on an east-west road, right? Cuts across the valley. One of my thoughts on it is anything like that, like talking about these neighborhood mixed use commercial things. And because it's like, these are corridors that are connecting 191 Spanish Valley. So like, maybe not today, but 30 years, one of my things I've been pushing is ideas like that being not like a restricted commercial use, like doctor's office, instead of like, necessarily like a tourist facing thing, like neighborhood commercial things. I just put that comment out there that because that is on a connector road that I see is close to a node that we're looking at in the Spanish Valley, Spanish Trail area. That's like, oh, this may be like mini neighborhood. A part of me, I drove around your property today, on the road, you kind of checked it out, and I almost, when you build houses, it's hard to unbuild them. And a part of me is like, oh, this vision of what you're doing. Oh, I'll put it this way, if you're not gonna trade affordable housing with it, I don't wanna upzone, but I think that maybe the vision of what it's just as housing may be limited to like maybe a commercial or a split commercial area. I'm just talking long range things on that. So, because you talked about, oh, if we split them up, now you have 9 lots that are $1 million a piece instead of 5 that are 1.5 million, and they're still not affordable. So the AEH idea is to put active employment household is to put in a separate market. I mean, I'm like, can you give us one? You give us one to deal with? Dangle a carrot for us to upzone
What does
because
that mean? Give us one.
give us one active employment household deed restricted unit. I mean,
You're
It's something-
saying on the property, one of the lots.
or just something, I'm just saying like, okay, let's upzone the whole neighborhood. Like what are you giving us? I mean, we want to build housing, but we want to build the correct housing. And I don't see any path to that unless it's deed restricted.
So what is the?
Let me just, Jenna,
Yes.
it's one of you people who are really good, or if Elisa's still online, I don't think we can actually ask somebody to give us something for an upzone.
That's
Is it a-
true. Yeah, I would be careful to kind of set that up.
Yeah, it's just not allowed, otherwise we'd be in negotiating
Yes.
with people. If this was an HDHO piece, well, that's okay, because that's the way that's been set up as an overlay, but we can't actually negotiate with you for, and that's what we had the same problem where we were discussing people when in the small area plan to the north of, up 191 toward the north, the entrance there. And we got them to say, hey, we put all of this land into such and such. and only develop this land and anyway. We can't do it.
So
Yeah.
that can't be like, I would deed restrict 2 units.
Yeah, we could say, well, if you deed restrict 3 of these, we'll give you an upzone.
Yeah, we can't do that yet because we don't have that built into our code as a density bonus yet. Although we do have the planned unit development density bonus that's,
Right.
that has been adopted. And I don't know if that would be something that they'd want to look into if it wasn't going to go forward as an SLR rezone.
But Aaron, to your point, Sarah already mentioned their objective and their history here. Could you repeat that again, and the one that you just developed as far as local ownership?
Oh, sure. I guess I would just say there were 27 lots in that subdivision and we've sold almost all of them. We just have a handful left. But we only sold 4 of them to people who don't live in Grand County. So, you know, in every house that we've built, we have sold to a family who lives here and works here in Grand County and is trying to raise their family here. So
What do you think it was about those lots that made it appealing to them rather than somebody from out of town?
well, I think it was affordable. Somebody making $2 a month could buy that. I mean, I realize that lots of people out of town can afford it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, I don't think it's that great of a location. It's not that close to town. It's not, you know, you have to drive everywhere. You couldn't bike to town necessarily. So, I don't know. I
But
think,
it sounds like you hit kind of a sweet spot for the local market, and that was my question, is what do you think it was about the project you completed that appealed, what is it, all but 4 or 5 out of 30 almost?
I mean, I think it's just,
That's
it was the price.
85%.
Yeah, it was the price. And some were sold to local contractors.
Oh.
So what they're doing with them is their business. It's not mine anymore, but,
What kind of range of prices were they?
let's see, they started about 500. Now, I know the local contractor has sold for quite a bit more than that, but
Were these when interest rates were lower or at current interest rate?
the last one was sold was last spring.
I mean, interest rates are so high right now
18
that a
months ago.
$500,000 mortgage is.
Yeah. I
It's
guess the
hefty.
rest of them.
Oh, yeah, it's so hard. Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, I agree, we're not negotiating, but one thing I think we can do is. We can go back over the last couple years that I've been on the commission, for example, and go over the projects where they've asked for upzones. And. I don't know if we've, I don't know if we've passed any,
I'm just gonna reiterate, you're not on the planning commission, but for the folks who
That is
are
correct.
on the planning commission, in indicating a preference
Yeah,
or just even like showing your cards about how you're probably going to vote in 20 minutes before there is a motion on the table is a bit of a breach. So we have to keep it until a motion is on the table, extremely objective.
yeah.
And- no, just,
No.
that's for everybody. You're
Yeah.
not the only person, but it's like,
Yeah,
if there is tone beyond objectivity in the way we talk before we have a motion, we just need to reel that back.
yeah.
and we may be done asking questions.
Yeah.
If we are. Thank you very much. Very helpful. Tony, do you have a
We
mo?
were trying to think of the 2 applications.
The
in
one
this,
was-
One was Rico previously, who was recently been approved for the ADL.
Okay,
and I'm trying to
thank you.
think of one
The
one.
other one that I remember was out by the vet clinic, that 11-acre parcel. that-
Oh,
Starts with the S,
Definitely.
thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing now is
I just wanna make
it's-
sure, Obi, before you point to me, is there any other citizen testimony in the room? Anybody that needs to speak up before we start talking in citizen style?
I just, bring a question.
An introduction.
Oh,
Sorry, we
sorry.
have to.
My name is Kyle.
I'll trade you.
The very first thing on, Alyssa that did the screen sharing was, recommend, her top point was recommended increased density, so what are we talking about here? It's not moving from half acre to quarter acre. What are we asking for? What is the I can't remember your word, but the right type of housing.
Yeah, oh,
If I could just speak to that slightly. I understand, as I understand, the commission has been awaiting the outcome of the future land use
Yes.
map in an effort to not make piecemeal zonings. So the future land use map, of course, being the tool for the commissioners to make some data-driven decisions. And I know of the few that we can think of off the top of our head that have been requesting from LLR or rural residential to more increased residential zoning districts. Even if there was an interest in that, the consensus was to wait for the outcome of the future land use maps to be consistent with those choices.
And we wanted to do that. I don't know if you were here, but when we bought this property almost 3 years ago now, they said, oh, we're only like 3 months from the final map. 3 years worth of interest later, these lots aren't getting more affordable, I can guarantee you that. Is it gonna be another 3 years? Do you have the right map?
Well,
The-
we definitely didn't start the future land use map 3 years ago. It was last fall that we started it. So and I think, you know, the timeline that I laid out just previously in the meeting was we would be wrapping up in April of 2024.
Every time we get on the website, it's a little different color. What is the current most up-to-date proposed zone for this parcel?
I mean, there is no proposed zone at this point. The process of drafting the future land use map is an iterative process. And so we're going to be shifting, things are going to be changing along the way as we hone in on what the concepts are that we all agree on for future land use planning. And those have been getting more fine-tuned as we get more feedback from the public and the stakeholders and all of that input. So yes, it has changed and it probably will still change, but I think that we are getting closer to coming to consensus on the general areas where higher density would likely be appropriate.
Is this one of those general areas where higher density would likely be appropriate or not?
I don't think the owl's probably picking up the question, so she may not have heard it.
No, I heard that. I would have to go back and look. I don't have that map in front of me right now. And I think that that's kind of, it's almost a little bit dangerous to be making a decision on a draft map. I just feel like that the Spanish Trail intersection with Spanish Valley Drive is one of those emerging commercial nodes that we think we should be designating higher density housing. And so how far out does it go from there? I think that's still kind of being figured out.
Any other public comment? And not online, I'm guessing. Okay, Tony.
Professional bureaucrat here. I'm gonna make a motion after I second, if you guys would be so kind as to let me kick off the discussion that I've got. Much to say.
It's probably pretty standard for me to say,
Yeah.
and then the seconder, and then we get into the real.
Now, pull up the language here just a second, I'm gonna unlock my phone. I will move to forward a favorable recommendation to the county commission to approve the ordinance approving a rezone property located at 2560 Spanish Valley Drive on Grand County, parcel number 221-1 to the small lot residential zoning district based on one or more of the following items of consideration. A through J, that's very long. I have none that I would exclude. And then wait for a second. And here we go. Thanks, Chair. I share Aaron's concerns. I would be moving forward with this with a resounding yes, if there were at least one deed restricted or affordable unit voluntarily brought. I'm moving forward with a favorable recommendation because I would not put someone in a situation like a quid pro quo. And I think that I have to remember the way I have voted previously on other density zone changes for the various different programs that we have in this area. And we have approved, and I have voted in favor to approve 2/10 of an acre lots density on other lots in this vicinity before. And so I need to be consistent with my logic. I can't flip flop and do that, and say, well, this one isn't affordable, but it's the same amount of density, the same amount of space. And they're not obligated to provide a deed restriction here. And so I'm moving forward based on that thesis, consistency in my voting record. And it is, in my opinion, smaller. We're talking about 9, and depending, maybe it gets smaller than that. I mean, even if you didn't have laybacks and interior roadways, only 14. This is not the kind of rezone that might dramatically swing the housing stock and change the value of a home in Moab, right? This is not, you know, I have enough room for 45. If you give me a density bonus, I'm gonna build 80. You know, we're not talking about a project that big. I also look at the plat map and I'm looking at the largest, emptiest lot on the block, right? So that's an old airport. That's probably 2016 or 2018, right? 3 years ago, it's still the largest empty lot on the block. So this is not perfect, in my opinion, but it would be unjust, I think, to not approve it based on the way I have voted previously. Anyway, spoke my piece.
Gary? My only dilemma here is, I do believe we're getting closer to the future land use map. The patchwork is a bit concerning, although, you know, the odds of this being out of place with 9 residents on it, considering what else has been developed around it, those odds are low. So, I think given the balance of the two, my thought is to move towards approval as well.
I have a question for staff that you can hopefully weigh in on, based on this. You clarify me if I'm wrong, but this lot is contiguous to another lot that you said was in 2019 upzoned from LLR to SLR.
One just to the north, it's
Just to-
labeled 2550, so it created that one additional lot just to the north of that.
That's tiny.
Let me see if I can click on it for you.
So they're touching.
Right, so it was this lot and the rezoning allowed them to create this one additional lot as well.
So it's that diagonal line just below the green, that's the adjoining property line, if I understand it correctly.
But, yeah,
Can staff maybe expand on just the concept of spot zoning and how we're in that territory?
As far as when that parcel was rezoned, I can't speak to that. At that time, I believe it would have been labeled as spot zoning.
Right,
But
so
how
it's-
that determination was made at that time, I couldn't speak to. But that would set this application in a place to be not spot zoning. Is it, the zoning to the north exists now? And so because it's touching, it's not.
And you have more to say, Steve, on that?
I'll just share what I mean. Well. It does to not zone this when the other one was, that it like clearly means the other one was spot zoning. And so, I mean, the precedent has been set. So,
what year, do we know what year that one was subdivided?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I'll say about that other property, it's family. Whether you want to state that or not, it is a dad, and you could see he gave one parcel to his son and,
It was
or he sold one
2019.
parcel to his son, and I wasn't around then, but,
I think it was 2019.
and I'm not trying to make
Yeah.
that right or wrong, I'm just making a statement.
I guess if I'll solidify my 2 cents on it, I feel like it's only almost underutilized, putting 9 units on it. Like, I think this might, like, I know we're slow, I know, like, we got stuff going on, but I'm like, this is prime, like, undeveloped, like, a lot of undeveloped stuff in this lot, and I'd like to see it more dense for affordable housing. That's,
Neighborhood, I don't,
yeah.
So one of the
and
discussions.
I'm the one that has a lot kitty corner from Anderfield, and we could have done 7 and we only did 4. So there was a reason for that. And it was because we looked at the surrounding properties and what the area looked like. And I'm not gonna make a freaking dime on this when I'm done. I have, the road is gonna get put in this week that I tried to keep from having done. But I'm doing it, and I'm doing it that way because it fits the area, 1/4 acre lots as opposed to putting. There would have been 3 more lots in there. That
So-
was absurd.
Just for a clarification, I'd like to ask a question about this. The way this is written up, it says Grand Water and Sewer are confirmed up to 9. So does that mean Grand Water and Sewer were not allowed to go over 9? Or is that what it was? Okay.
They'll sign off on
Yeah. those are-
almost anything they're near.
We can't say that, but we know.
So Wilson,
Just a Wilson.
Wilson was ultimately just, those agencies being alerted to the application, and they would either sign or not sign based on, anything that would hinder development or that application from moving forward. So I'm sure that Sarah had presented that proposal for 9, but if they were to request more, it would be evaluated during the subdivision process again as well. And final approval by WISA for that amount would need to be verified.
Okay, that's,
I think that, you know, having promises of affordable housing or selling to locals are empty unless we have any legislative, like, or some kind of deed restriction on it. The idea is if we can outbuild our problem. And this is an example, it's like, okay, if we add 9 units, is it gonna drop? We add 1,000 units, can we, you know, what part of the market is gonna drop because of non-deed restricted units? And we are in a housing crisis, we need more affordable stepping stone housing. I don't see this, I see this as a mid-step to a high step. I mean, a $500,000 lot is still not attainable on a median income person in Grand County.
it's not a starter home, I think you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah, so,
Yeah.
in the spirit of like. My libertarian streak is do what you want with it, but I just feel like it is underutilized, and I almost think about that. Follow our with future land use and be like, maybe you could make more money on it. And that would be my 2 cents in it.
And this, of course, actually has torn me. I've thought about many things, you know, yes, nicer to build more houses. And there was a subdivision of 1 lot, the other ones that are kind of cited that have, you know, a 1/4 acre lots or 1/5 of an acre lots are HDHO related. And they basically did deed restricted housing. I think one of them's an ADO
Yes,
also, and it's the same kind of thing. We think those are probably pretty deed restricted for locals, and they're even on a lower market. And then Elisa may be able to correct me on this, or someone else here may be able, if this is in the future land use plan, at some density they think might be appropriate. People who rezone at that time will probably have to supply some deed restricted housing or not.
if it's written into the land use code for an overlay with a density bonus, there would be a development agreement to accompany
Yeah.
that approval. If it's just a rezoning to a request based on the future land use map, not necessarily a general rezone, wouldn't tie you to any development stipulations.
I guess, I had a question too that just came to the back of my mind that's not relevant to this case, but I think still relevant, and that is when we're moving forward with a future land use map, and we're talking about things like, you know, the higher density and then moving down as you go into a small lot, large lot and so on. Do we look at projections on ideally what would be the mix of deed restricted and then moving, you know, into the other categories?
I can't speak to that. I have no doubt Elisa's probably working on something that I do apologize. She did pop off because she's not available right now, but I would say maybe direct that specific question to her separately in an email. I don't have that information.
I know I asked that same question a long time ago, and I don't remember the exact answer, but I know that there is like a golden ratio.
25% is what I think BAE is shooting for on affordable.
So then that should be one of the factors we look at in the future land use map.
Any other discussion? Why don't we vote on the motion?
I'm cut corner.
How many are in favor of the motion? How many are opposed?
Completely torn.
Okay,
So we've got
and we,
2 and 1,
I,
yeah?
if we're a hang vote, can we, while the motion is on the floor and vote, right? Can we go back to asking more information from the project proponents, or is that off the table for us now?
I think we would say that this motion had a vote on it. I think it would be okay to ask. Does anybody have an objection to asking for more information?
Be inconsistent.
I don't want to be inconsistent. I don't have Robert's rules in front of me.
What? Oh, no, I don't. I was like, oh, I might, but I don't. It's in
I
my.
think it sounds fair.
Yeah.
And we are in a funny way, of course, only a recommending body.
Right.
I mean, a recommendation
Oh,
here
yeah,
would
you've got it.
probably
She's got it.
go forward with the vote, right? 2, 1. I mean, you need 4 people to pass anything and a couple abstaining, and as I understand it, Jenna, our vote doesn't stop anybody from going onto the commission and saying, well, gee, here's where we are. The planning commission couldn't come to a decision. And you can report how you report to them.
Is this something favorable? You think the other commissioners are gonna? Does it matter?
I can't speak to that. That's why I was kind of trying to bring up like the past couple of years, right? And what we've done as far as upzoning, and it's not really happened. I remember specifically with that 11-acre parcel, we did ask him if he was interested in giving us a little bit for workforce, and he was not. And then I would say that to me is the common theme too, is specifically with Kevin Walker. He stated like, I just don't want to get into spot zoning right now. I really want to wait for the future land use map. So I would say those were kind of consistent. The few that have come, it's just been pretty sparse.
I feel like too, and I know that our department, when an applicant comes to us to request a rezoning like this, we have that full discussion with them, the
Right.
histories of previous rezonings. We
Right,
talk about the future land use map and the upcoming adoption of that and the planning process for that.
right.
So I know that there's probably several applicants waiting in the wings for that as well. And it's
Right.
up to an applicant to move forward at their own accord. I mean, ultimately, if the applicant gets this recommendation, they can choose at this time to wait until then, when the future land use map comes out, and then move forward at that time with the support of that map.
And that goes to the question I wanted to ask them, if I'm allowed. In planning, you guys get funded, what are the odds that come back with even less than everything? Gotta make up costs, not a lot higher. Say, well, we wanted 9, but now we have to only do 5. I can sell them at 3/4 mil.
I can tell you that 5 is not feasible because it's, we'll make more money at 3 than at 5.
Right.
Because at 3, we do not have to repave Spanish Valley Drive.
Right.
We do not have to run in water, sewer, irrigation, curb, gutter, and pavement.
Yeah,
We make more money at 3 than at 5.
so that's the odds of what happens. It's like demanding more density out of this in the future land use plan doesn't guarantee density.
Wait.
Maybe we misunderstood.
Are you saying, my hearing? Maybe I'm hearing this wrong.
Yeah, let ask the
I
question
thought
again.
you guys were against additional density. You're saying we're not asking for it enough.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, we would like to
Yes.
see forward.
How do the favors fill in on that?
I think this,
I don't like it.
I'm gonna allow this discussion, but I think I'm gonna stick with the vote.
Yeah,
But I feel
We're still
discussion.
voting, we're
I
just
think,
getting.
yeah, so I'm going to call an end to the public hearing and allow us to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Should we bring Kyle up?
You guys-
Come up? So
you guys drag-
just so we can hear your,
Yes.
we can hear your voices.
Nothing
Come
wrong
up,
with
that way
public-
we can,
nothing wrong with
we can hear
public
you.
input.
Just like you-
I wanna understand this, thing. Never seen us this hung up on a project.
Oh, you guys help, yes,
Oh, I was thinking all day about this
We,
yesterday.
we realize, to your point, that we can make more money than less. But we don't wanna destroy the neighborhood. It's a nice neighborhood.
Yeah,
Uh,
And you're more okay with this.
when I go,
it's
like right
not
over here,
acceptable. 9 is.
a block from
I mean-
here is a skyscraper in a guy's front yard. And I don't wanna do that. That's not the right way to.
To my point, and the reason why I was like, I think this is, we have to say yes to this one. Is that not only is 14 unacceptable to the neighbors, but the laybacks and the development, like 14. From an engineering and infrastructure perspective, is already off the table. We've got 9. Future land use plan might come back someday and say, you know, high density condominiums.
Yeah.
It might, but it doesn't sound like the business that you guys are in,
That's not what we do.
and they own the lot.
Yeah. And having, local ownership, you got, that kind of thing. And my only other things are, it's right next to the highway, like that's the character of it,
I think the reason we decided to find out is we were hoping that the new land use plan would be out by now, and so we put this off, for a year. It's not getting cheaper to develop a lot. When you look at just the dirt, and then you add the pipe and the road and all the utilities, the costs just keep mounting. We can put it off, but then it's just getting more and more expensive for a buyer.
I'm gonna just kind of make 2 points to add to this. And just because this is always the way that I think, and it may be the way someone else thinks, I'm always thinking of what about a potential next purchase or a next
Right.
property owner?
Right.
Nothing about a rezone would tie anything to the proposed 9 units. It would be allowed to be developed or sold immediately or whatever. And has nothing to do with the applicant at all. I'm just always thinking about the next possible owner. And then just to the point of the future land use map timeline, as Elisa mentioned, the timeline was always for it to be out this fall. So if it were to come out right now, it would be right on time. So for it to come out just a little bit later is not too far off of the timeline. So just want to highlight that we're not too far off that timeline.
I do share this, and again, not that this is just in kind of a general caution about applicants, not about you, which is you rezone, that's one process. You say, okay, 5 units per acre. But you don't rezone. This is a nice thing about the overlays, because of course, they come in with the plan happening, but your plan could change. In any number of ways, or, somebody could have an auto accident or whatever, and all of a sudden it's got a higher density you've given density away, and again, this is this terrible thing, but I've probably been influenced by Kevin also. If you're going to have this density that you can give, is there any kind of gift we get back? And of course, the overlay districts do that, but rezoning doesn't. So, I mean, just terrible.
Any other questions? Thank you. That was a good one.
No, I just, for the group, from where I'm sitting and what I'm looking at is like, we've got what is, trackable into the future. I can't see 30 years into the future.
Yeah.
But what we've got right now is probably the most density that we can expect out of this lot in, I'm gonna throw a random number, 7 years.
Yeah.
Right?
And the theory,
So
The only thing
that's what I'm seeing, like, you're not gonna be building 12, right? It's getting more expensive, and as your expenses go up, your lot sizes are gonna go up because you're gonna, right? I'm not a builder, but that's how it works. We've got 9, and we're not getting any more out of it in the near term, right? We're not saying the house is even getting built. We're not saying it doesn't get sold in 7 years and then go to, that was HD, HD 14. Right?
Can I ask you guys a question? If you want more housing, why don't you zone the whole entire strip between Spanish Valley Drive and the highway? More dense.
That's probably a good part of the future land use map is exactly how you do that,
Well, you
right?
guys are the only ones that are in a position to make it dent. You gotta
Yeah.
supply and
But
demand.
I
that's,
just definitely
that's a
feel-
part of that process that's going on right now, and I'll state from my position, standing on the outside looking in to what. Planning and zoning has been doing, they've tried to make it very, trying to involve the community, so it's not a fast process. I don't know how many workshops they've had throughout the community, trying to get people to come to give their recommendations, so you can't rush it because we're trying to encompass the community. If you want the planning and the county commission to make the decision without community input, it'd be a lot faster, but that's not appropriate.
How much longer do you think we'll have to wait?
I think she mentioned having some output in April 2024.
Yeah, that's what her timeline.
Yeah.
I guess you make good points, and there is a theory that says all you just need to build it and not restrict it, and that'll help it. And I don't subscribe to that theory, but something's better than nothing. So, I mean, I guess I'm,
When I see a $40 million development, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm looking at.
you're totally right. I guess I would straw poll myself as a yes in favor of the room.
Although you are for this development, probably the way it stands, I'm guessing.
Yes.
But the very nice thing about your development is it basically houses, it has, part of your family, and it houses workers in the community.
Correct, but it's not to say that their 9 houses wouldn't also, I
We
mean,
don't know
there
that.
is the step up, right? But these people who are, these lots are going to, well, if I was trying to make money on it, they couldn't afford it.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not making money on
Yeah.
this. I'm
Yeah.
just getting my money back, hopefully.
Yes,
And
But there are people who, I'm also selling, everyone's single. There's no couples in this, there's nobody. And it's gonna be tougher for them. They're all kind of scrambling now because 2019, they could have built for a lot less. And this is how long this is dragged on.
Yep.
And
So you
I
think
think
it's
a
just-
lot of people are, you talk about the ADHOs, people walk away from it. The only people you're gonna get to do that are developers.
what's that?
Well, with the high density overlay,
Housing
and that's what I got into.
Yeah.
Which there is.
So
one in
the
your
houses
neighborhood,
are
the houses
restricted.
are-
We tried. but they
The
said,
houses
"Oh, no,
are
you don't get
restricted.
that. Only all the people that are.
Well, you-
in front of you get that.
Well,
Or the
There
units are all
was-
used up or something.
yeah,
yeah, that's
there was
right.
a
All
limit,
those units used
there
up.
was a limit to how many they started in the beginning.
And I'm still on that thing with but to me, it's a corridor with a potential commercial thing, but that's
And
so
I
far
would
away.
really flip out if it went commercial.
But
And everyone else in the neighborhood would
Here's,
too.
here's the
We got
problem.
commercial on every one.
Here's the problem. I have to wait 8 months for a doctor's appointment here. And if that was a doctor's office and there was another person able to.
Believe me.
I'm gonna-
But
Like, you're right, I'm just gonna try and keep it
Yeah.
theory correct, but
Yeah.
let's keep it away from the
Yeah.
theory a little bit.
okay,
So-
Yes,
so
you know how we do in this board.
so we've got, what, 3 yeses and 1 no?
I know what we have actually, I think, are two abstains, 2 yeses and 1 no. I believe that's what the vote was.
Oh, I thought that was a straw poll.
No, that was a vote on the
Obi
motion.
never said it.
Oh.
Obi's gotta say. this.
Repeat that, I'm sorry.
Oh,
And I think
Well,
we're
I guess.
good, and I appreciate the feedback and.
I didn't get that as a
Re-
vote,
will you
I'm
repeat-
sorry,
Yeah.
I did
Well-
not understand that.
I
that was
guess-
a vote.
sorry.
My bad.
You didn't get that vote.
I thought we
Can-
had, yeah.
I thought that was just a.
Straw poll.
But
Okay, then we'll make sure that it is a vote.
Okay, great.
This is a vote on the motion. Motion was basically to approve this proposal.
As written.
You read it as, and you did read it basically off the sheet
Yeah,
here.
my motion is that is
Yes.
type in the notes.
How many are for it? And how many are against it? And how many abstain? So it is 3-4. One against and one abstain. We need 4. And you need 4.
This is just a recommending body, right? So, yeah, so I mean, it's,
12-year-olds said, Mom, do you think they're gonna approve you? I said, oh, no.
Well, and we're not.
You're still gonna have your day in front of them.
Yeah, and the other thing to note is you're missing one. We are down one commissioner. If another commissioner had been here, you might have gotten.
Can I have it on the record that I would strongly encourage the body of the county commission to listen to the discussion of this one?
oh, yeah,
Because I would
absolutely.
like this whole conversation in there. Here's just,
Yeah,
I normally won't like ask that of the higher authority,
yeah,
but they're just. Not even just your topic, but on the theory of how we approve these things. Folks on the commission should hear what that.
what would help is when we know this is going on the agenda, if you could tell me. This is, you know what I mean, that way, so usually the bummer is we get our agenda with a 400-page packet on Friday night.
But there's.
And then we have a meeting on Tuesday, so if I knew a little like
So
lead
here's what I'll
in.
do. So when I have a public hearing, and there'll be a public hearing commission for that,
That's
I
sweet, weird.
alert
Right.
admin that there's a public
Right.
hearing for a post.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a-
The other point,
That's
Yeah.
perfect. That'd
there's
be
one
great.
other point I'd
That
like
way
to
I
make.
can reference them to.
One other point I'd like to make, probably for the benefit, at least the point I'd like to make for the planning commission, and that is, this is an if, but if the future land use map supported SLR, I would think this would have been a lot simpler to start.
Right.
Amen. I agree. Okay, I guess now, do we have any future considerations?
Just that I'll be gone on the 9th again, so I apologize. Keep that in mind, trying to find a forum.
Thank you.
I do have two things for future considerations.
Okay,
One is for Elisa, and I think she's gone, but Jenna, maybe you could pass this on or just note it. That is, the county attorney offered to do a training session. And I don't know, I think we talked a little bit about that last time, but we do have a couple of applicants, so assuming that the applicants get interviewed in the next meeting, maybe towards, that would put us towards the end of October for the applicant to come in, and at that point, I would say late October, early November, could we schedule a training session at a time that works with the county?
Also, for a couple new folks here and for the new folks we're bringing in, we should know that training, POTMA, is mandatory under state law that we all go to it annually.
Is that a
So
little
And
link
it's-
they can
yeah.
do?
Yeah, super quick and.
it's
yeah.
super quick, it's easy. They don't,
They didn't
Very-
say anything about not negotiating.
I mean, that's,
That's, I feel like I need like next level, like, oh, this is, 'cause I kind of got lost. in it.
yeah, it's typically, what we're evaluating is what is presented to us as written. And Jenna's the one doing the negotiating before it gets this far, right?
I think,
But getting
Negotiating,
like she's
Yes.
she's
she's
conveying like,
advising,
this is.
she's advising and giving, not
Yeah.
negotiating, not
Here are the lines.
And
Color.
Right.
well, and I do
Let's
think,
say,
I do think people have done things like. Yeah, we will add 2 parking spaces or something because they were under what is required, but they thought maybe they could get away with it, or a little something on fencing and, you know.
A voluntary boom
but
is
what they're-
what is different than, I want to see you do this. okay.
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
You know,
but that's okay. They could, like how things are done right now. Somebody came into the office with a 2.88 acre lot and said, I'm going to give you 2 deed restricted places.
Can't do it.
No,
You have to have
It'd be
something
looked
written
at
in the
as a
land
quote
development
right.
as a type of rezoning or.
Yeah, yeah,
that
but that's
requires a
possible
development
to
agreement.
have in that development.
If the requirement for development agreement for that type of project
Yeah.
exists in the land use code already.
So otherwise, it's just. a
So we're
handshake.
moving in that direction, the density.
We don't have
studies
that.
and the-
so,
Us,
Yeah, that's what that's what it would be, yeah.
right, we don't have that.
Not currently.
Not correct, but we're moving, right,
And so what, we're
I don't know
6
which
months
will
away from
happen
that?
faster, the future land use map or that.
I would
Which is-
also,
which
just
would be-
a note for you,
My hope is.
I'm
that
pretty
they do
sure
that
they
8
left
months
thinking
from now,
that their
and there'd
entire
be
thing is not
some
approved
mechanism
yet.
in place.
So you should call them back and
I
they,
send them.
Who knows?
Yeah.
and they didn't seem to understand that it was a recommendation and the council is gonna make a decision, you know?
So Jenna, I had one more thing.
One
for
more future consideration,
And I'll be quiet.
promises.
I promise.
I'm trying my best not to consider.
Other than I mentioned. That is, on page 13 of the handouts today, it was referring to this property, but what I'm gonna bring up has nothing to do with this property. It referred to a 2012 general plan as a rural center, and then it talked about ranging in size and so on. And there's an ABC in it,
Mhm.
you probably know these really well, 50% open space set aside, 25% affordable housing units and so on. As part of the future land use map planning process. Are we gonna be reviewing these?
I think those are, yes, the land use designations, you were at the meeting, it was the various zoning designations that there were. So, and then the writing and requirements for each of those zoning designations and the associated density are being rewritten based on the feedback at those workshops.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the reason
those
I
will
ask
change.
is
They're a little
50% open
obsolete.
space is huge.
Mhm.
And if we don't, I mean, if we're trying to drive the cost of housing down, and
Yeah,
we have, what, 90-some%?
yeah,
not-
2012 was a really long time ago.
Yeah, that's,
It really sucks to be a houseless ecologist, let me tell you.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, okay, that was all I have, thank you.
We ready to adjourn probably, huh?
I will move to adjourn.
All in
That
favor?
was good.